great to have you listening in today. As with previous seasons, it is my hope that the guests and their stories that I get to share with you this season can provide you with the tools and or insights that you need to know that you can make it through whatever is happening for you now. And not only that you can have the life you want in whatever way you want that to look like. So let's get to it. I'm your host, Helen Morris, and this is the beautiful side of grief. Like me, you've probably grown up knowing what star sign you were born under and probably know some of the dominant traits as well to your star sign. But for me, especially when I was younger, I was a Virgo through and through with my perfectionist tendencies and being just slightly overcritical. Hopefully I've sort of mellowed over the years. But what if these natal or birth charts can actually tell us what it is we have signed up for in this lifetime? And what if they're actually able to tell us when major life events are likely to hit? I know it may seem a bit out there, but hold off any judgments until you get to hear from my guest today, fellow Kiwi, which I'm very excited about. I don't get too many Kiwis on my podcast, and Esoteric Astrologer, Clairvoyant and Metaphysical Teacher, Deidre Wilton. She travels all over the world teaching people about their soul's journey and purpose in this lifetime, including what gifts and talents you have brought with you, how you naturally learn physically, spiritually, mentally, and emotionally, and what past life energies are affecting you in this incarnation. Plus, so much more. Like, there's loads to this. This truly is a blueprint of your life. So the intention I would like to set for this episode is for us to get an understanding of what esoteric astrology is and how that can help us find out the truth about ourselves. Why some of us have heartache after heartache and tough lessons to learn, while others just seem to breeze through life. And by understanding you and accepting you and your journey, you can find happiness. Oh, and we'll also talk about those dreaded retrogrades that we keep hearing about also. So I'm sending you my love and my thanks for listening in today. And I truly hope what we can share with you today can certainly help you out. So a very warm welcome to you, Deidre.
Thank you. Thank you, Helen. Lovely to be here and join you today.
Good. I truly am excited to have you. It's not often I get fellow Kiwis and so this has just been a real highlight for me. And I have to say, I'm also excited to have you as a guest today because the sessions I went through with you earlier this year were spot on. But first of all, before we get into talking about those, help us understand what esoteric astrologers and metaphysical teachers are. I mean, how did you get to do this type of work?
Well, it's a bit of a long story, but starting from the beginning, esoteric astrology and metaphysical work is about humanity understanding that there's more than just meets the eye. And, and there's so much more that can help us and guide us along the way if we bother to look for it or bother to look outside the box. But we're so used to being told what to do and being programmed in certain ways that we don't look to other things. We just feel that what you see is what you get. And you don't realize that there are other energies, other support systems, other guidance systems out there in the universe that are very useful for us. And that there's many, many energies out there in the universe that have devoted their entire existence to helping humanity in some way. So esoteric astrology is the study of the soul's journey from lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, because we're all spirit having a human experience. And so we come to the earth plane because the earth plane is a school of learning. So when we talk about all the terrible, challenging things that people go through and how much grief some people do have in their lives, and as you said before, some people who just seem to glide through life not having any problems at all, it's all down to what they choose before they're born. So everything you go through in a lifetime, you've chosen to go through. And you haven't chosen to be miserable or suffer or go through horrible hardships. You've chosen to learn something because your soul is just on this journey of learning. And it's like anything in life. If we we can read a book to learn something, or we can experience it to learn something. And we all know that when we actually go through the experience, we learn so much more than when we just pick up a book and read it. And so this is what we do. We choose our lives before we're born. We choose to learn all these different lessons in different areas of our lives so that our souls can evolve through the experience of knowing what this feels like. So we've all been kings and queens, and we've all lived in the gutter. We've all been multimillionaires. We've all been totally poor. We've all been murdered, and we've all been murderers, because your soul is on a journey. It wants to experience everything, because not only after it's experienced all that there is can it really say, I know what this is, I understand what this is, I accept what this is, and I can move out of what this is.
Okay, so that's the whole point of it. When we choose our journey, it's to learn the lessons that we sign up for. And sometimes we can sort of readily learn those lessons, and other times, no. We're a bit slow coming around. I know, especially when Tal died, and my listeners will have heard me speak about this before, I talk about some of the ways that I truly was able to accept her passing. Well, if this is the lifetime that I signed up to, then I knew that at some stage I was going to have this experience of losing my child. And then if she also signed up to that journey, then she signed up to only being here for 18 years or thereabouts, And so that really, really helped me, I guess, feel that it was all sort of like life flowing and that it was all meant to be. And so I never asked why. I just accepted, okay, you signed up to this, girlfriend, so now you need to deal with it and move on with it. Now, there's also something else I read on your website when I was researching you, and that's talking to us when you talk about, is it Chiron? Chiron? Chiron?
Yeah, Chiron, the
wounded healer. Yeah, which you consider the bridge between discipline and our freedom, as this seems to be the basis of what many of us need to understand to heal ourselves. So can you just talk to us a little bit about that?
Sure. So Chiron is known as the wounded healer. So he was a planet that wasn't discovered until I think 1977 he was discovered. So he's a fairly new planet out in the cosmos. Well, I mean, he's been there a long time, but we've only just discovered him. And so, most of the planets and the stories that go with them are all from Greek and Roman mythology. So Chiron back in Greek mythology was a centaur, half man, half horse. And he was born to one of the big goddesses. I can't actually, remember off the top of my head which goddess it was, but he was born to her. And when he was born, she rejected him because she wanted a fully human child. And she gave birth to a centaur, half man, half horse. And so he was rejected at birth. And so Chiron, wherever he sits in your chart, carries the wound of rejection. And it's something you're born with that you bring into this lifetime. And the sign of the zodiac that he's sitting in shows what type of wound of rejection that might be. So, for instance, if you were born with your Chiron in Cancer, then your wound of rejection would be that you believe you're unlovable. So in other lifetimes, you've been treated like nobody loved you, nobody put a worth on you, nobody wanted you. And so you come into this lifetime believing in that rejection. And so you work through that in this lifetime, and you learn your self-love. You learn to put a worth on yourself. You learn that you are lovable. And once you've done that, you then are fully equipped to heal and teach everybody around you exactly what you learned. So, I mean, you would know from your experiences that when you're trying to help somebody and help somebody to understand something or to get through something, if you've got experience in that area, when you can say, oh, I went through that and this is how I dealt with it, even though that might be a different way to how the other person needs to deal with it, you're able to teach them so that they can learn and accept and understand that this is a process as well for them to go through. And that if you've gotten through it and you had, found the right tools that helped you or the right understanding that helped you, then this is what you then have the gift that you pass on to everybody else so that they can also use your tools that you've gone through the experience of going through this to attain so that you can pass on to somebody else.
It's almost like a language of awareness, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Once you've experienced it, then you're able to speak that language and people will intuitively pick up, you get it. You're not quite the same as me, but you get me. You get what I'm going through.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, that's pretty fascinating, because look, just what you said there. I know from myself, when I was growing up, I just never fit in with my family. I just felt the outsider. I honestly used to ask if I was adopted. That's how much I did not fit in with my family. And like, knowing what you've just said to me, if I had known that when so many years ago, that would have just made things so much easier. Yes. But I guess that's part and parcel of it all. We're all like, that what's the saying, that the teacher appears when we're ready to learn the lessons.
And the only time you know that you're not learning a lesson, where you're really not making any progress, is when you keep repeating the same thing. When you keep hitting that same brick wall, making that same mistake time and time again, that's when you're not learning your lessons. And that's when life gets really hard, because you're just, you might think you've learned something, and then it gets presented to you in a different way. So maybe you've got to learn tolerance, and your mother drives you around the bend. And so eventually, as time goes on, being the daughter, you learn tolerance, and you learn to accept, okay, well, that's the way mum is, and I just need to tolerate her, and she's not a bad person or anything. This is just who she is, and you accept it so that you can live with it. And then what will happen is you'll be presented with somebody else who really pushes your buttons, so that you can learn tolerance again from a different perspective. Because and it's like, a good example of that was our partners in life. Often, they might have been telling you something for the last week. You really need to do this. You really need to do this, and you just, no, you don't know. I'm fine. I've got it all sorted out. Yeah. And then somebody else comes to you and tells you exactly the same thing, and you listen to them. So it's just hearing it at the right time at the right place.
And it's almost like the world is in synchrony when it does that too. It's like when you suddenly are aware of something and know something or hear something, then you hear it or see it over and over again. Yes. It's like vehicles, like you don't notice a certain vehicle and you go, oh, wow, that's a pretty cool car. And then you see it again and again and again. Yeah. It's like you're open. So tell us how this all fits into our birth chart or natal chart. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So the first thing that people really need to get their head around, which will enable you to understand this, is the fact that you choose your life before you're born. And so if you can't accept that you do that, then you can't accept anything that you go through in this lifetime. Because you will constantly, if you can't accept the fact that you chose this to learn something through and you chose this experience, you're going to go through life constantly blaming everybody else for what you're going through. And because you're doing that, you're not going to learn anything.
So it seems to me that there are a lot of people out there that are still not ready to accept that there is something more than just our standard way of living, and that we're programmed to be this way and that's how we should be. There are so many people that are not in tune with this. No. So why? Why are they here then?
I think they're on a different stage of evolution. Their souls are developing in a different way. So we all reincarnate in soul groups. So every soul group's made up of around about 25 souls. And all of those souls are at the same frequency of energy, which means they're all at the same kind of level of development. They all understand the same sorts of things. They all have the same sort of awareness. And so they move through life, or through lifetime after lifetime together, helping one another, expanding one another, working with one another. And then we have the other groups who aren't the same, and because we're all different, and they've got their own lessons to work through. So it's almost like, as we have lifetime after lifetime, there's a bit of what I would call a ladder that we work our way up, not as a hierarchy system, not that anybody's better than anybody else, but as you face your fears, and as you open your mind, and as you learn to accept that there's more than just what you see straight in front of you, you start to raise up your vibration and your awareness. And so you kind of go up a step on the ladder. And so every time you do that, every time you face more of what you fear, you look outside of what's in front of you, you accept what's going on and ask for more, you move up the ladder. And what happens is the people who aren't prepared to do that don't move up the ladder. And it's not that there's anything wrong with them, or they're bad or wrong or anything like that. It's just that they're not ready to make that step. And so there's no point in trying to force them into it or make them believe you. I mean, there's no way I would ever expect anybody to listen to everything I have to say and to not argue with me or disagree with it, because everybody's entitled to their opinion. But we have to keep looking. We have to keep searching outside of ourselves. I think it's a pretty small mind that thinks that this is all that there is. And it's a pretty sad mind too.
Yeah. And there's lots of evidence out there, and especially now, I think in the past couple of decades, we've really allowed ourselves to be open to, more of the spiritual realm and more understanding that actually you can be scientific, but you can also believe in something more than that as well.
Yes.
And there's lots of people out there that are actually using evidence through scientific means to say that, we have a big, huge out there that has not been explored, but it's pretty powerful and it very much is influencing us.
Yes, absolutely.
So go back to our natal charts.
Yeah, so you choose your life before you're born. So, you have had other lifetimes on the earth plane, and every lifetime that you have, you choose certain things you need to learn so that your soul can evolve. And then you come down and you live that life. And unfortunately, as you're born, you forget all about everything that you've planned and what you've done. So you're here and you're kind of running blind, really. You've got no idea. And that's why I'm a great believer that children's astrology and that parents from day one should be able to see what their little child's come here to be and do. And then they can guide and support them along the way that they've chosen to come rather than what they think might be best for their children. So you come down, you choose your life and all you're going to go through, and you start to live it and you start to go through these experiences. So everybody who comes into your life is here to teach you something. And that's all predestined too. There's nobody that comes into your life that you haven't chosen to come in to teach you something. And so as I see it, it's almost like it's a giant spider's web. So the people closest to you especially always have an effect on you. So if we consider somebody, for instance, if I can use your daughter as an example, who chose before she was born to die at the age of 18. And so because of that, on a soul level, your soul, her father's soul, her soul, her best friend's soul, all the souls of the people closest to your daughter got together to become a part of this, because everybody had something to learn from the experience. So your daughter learnt what it was like to die at a young age and only have a short life. You learnt what it was like to lose your only daughter while she was very young and how to get on with life and survive that. I don't know what her father's position in this was, but I'm sure he had to learn to survive through this too. And, sometimes it could be, say your daughter had died in a car accident. And she did. So within that, there's also the car manufacturers. Maybe there's something that needs to be learnt there, that they weren't making their cars strong enough. Maybe the seatbelt was faulty.
Funny you should mention that, because when we shifted down to Hawke's Bay, and the first time I drove down the road that she actually died on, I went, oh, I have to be careful on this road. This is a bit tricky, this road. And that's because it had deep ditches on both sides. And it was, it was just one of those roads that was a little bit unexpected. And then lo and behold, that's what happened. So what I did following when she died is that we got the speed lowered on that road. Yeah.
So that's an extenuating circumstance that comes out of your daughter's death. So that in itself protects other people, helps other people. So there's always more reason than just a simple death. There's nothing simple about a death at all, but, there's learning for everybody who's involved. I mean, maybe the ambulance officers at the time, maybe they got to do something they'd never learned to do before, or learned something that they should never do again, or whatever that might be. But there's always more to it.
Yeah. And one of the first responders of the policeman that was on the scene was her old hockey coach.
You are.
And he was new into the police force.
Right.
And he had another older brother in the police force who was supporting him through all this. But actually, this particular guy has decided to move into the serious crash unit following all of this. Oh, yeah, it is bizarre how it all just starts to connect up. Yeah.
Yes. And so, some people who go through grief just stop. They just stop in their tracks because they're so hurt and so grief-stricken, they can't do anything. But that's not what it's about, that there's a purpose beyond the loss of this. Well, exactly, you are a perfect example of somebody who is taking their loss and turning it into something that can be beneficial to other people. because we don't go through anything. We all come with our gifts and talents. We all come with our experiences, and they're for us to go through, but then they're for us to also share so that everybody can benefit from the learning that goes on there.
Yeah.
And interestingly, when there is a spirit of, I've heard many people talk about this, and I've heard Spirit talk to me about it as well, that when there is a serious accident like that and somebody dies or there's a serious injury, always fire people, ambulance officers and police all turn up in spirit before they turn up in person. So a lot of people, I've talked to people who've been through near-death experiences and accidents and have said, this was this wonderful policeman turned up and he held my hand and he talked to me, and if it wasn't for him, I don't know if I would have got through. And everyone's going, no, the police didn't get there for another 15 minutes. That didn't happen. And there was only policewoman. There was no policeman. But you know that somebody held your hand and helped you through this. And so, the paramedics and the police people who have had really powerful careers in doing that and loved their work and enjoyed their work so much, when they pass over, they resume that role, but doing it from on the spiritual side.
That is pretty incredible. I love that. I love the fact that you're not alone, that you're surrounded by these beautiful souls. And so explain to us now, in our natal charts, we have things like planets, and we have the influence of the moons and other aspects like asteroids, which are influencing who you are and how you show up. So how does that make us unique?
Okay. You choose your life before you're born, and part of that choice is choosing to be born at an exact moment at a certain time. So this is why no two natal charts are ever usually the same. Very, very unusual for that to happen, because, people are born, we could all be born on the same day and in the same place, but we might be born at the same time. So that the planets move in relation to one another every 4 minutes. So there's a big shift at least every 4 minutes.
That's why it's so the time of birth is so important.
Absolutely.
What about for people that don't know when they were born?
Oh, well, that's a challenge, because if you don't know what time you were born, you will still know what planet was in what sign of the zodiac, but you won't know in a natal chart. A natal chart is a big round circle that's divided up into 12 different sections, and each of those sections represents a different area of your life. So where the planets sit in each section show you what that lesson is to learn in that area. And the sign of the zodiac they're sitting in shows how you're going to naturally go about learning that. So, for instance, if I can use your chart as an example, you are a Virgo, and all of your Virgo energy sits in your 10th house, which is your house of career, which basically makes you the ultimate employee. Because as a Virgo, you are incapable of half doing anything that is asked of you. So your challenge in this lifetime is to be the ultimate employee without all the stress, because trying to be perfect and trying to be the ultimate employee all the time is extremely stressful. But it can be done if you just accept the fact, I'm good at what I do. I'm meant to be here. This is my job. Rather than, it's never good enough and that person over there is doing so much better than me and I'm going to get the sack tomorrow. And, you can choose to be in that state of mind or the other state of mind. And that's your challenge as a Virgo in this lifetime.
It's so funny you talk about that, because my workmates joke to me, so you're still going to be here when we get back from tea break? Oh, yes, you are. We'll say goodbye then, because they know that I very rarely do I ever leave work on the exact time I am supposed to finish. Yeah. And that's just because I like to finish things off and, have everything nice, neat and tidy.
But, but it can be taken to the extreme. And this is why we've got to take, as a Virgo, you're here to see, you seek perfection in this lifetime. You believe in perfection. And so you will always do your absolute best within your career, because that's where your Virgo energy sits in your chart. So if your Virgo energy sat in the 4th house, which is the house of home and family, you would be a perfectionist within the home. Everything would be in perfect order. Everything would, and that's where that energy sits, and everybody's made up of all the signs of the zodiac. So wherever that, say, Virgo energy sits in everybody's chart is where they're going to be a perfectionist. And so once we know that, we can start to use it constructively.
Yeah. So also tell us about when we get multiple planets or moons in one quarter.
Yeah. So when you have a lot of planets in one house, it makes it more than 3 planets in a house makes that area of your life a major focus. something, that's the universe saying, well, you said before I was born, I'm going to really focus on my career in this lifetime. That's what's going to be important to me. And it's particularly where we place the sun in our natal chart, because your sun is always your primary focus and where you're here to be the most focused and to do the best. But then we have to also remember that where the sun shines, it can burn. So being too much of a perfectionist in your case, what that does is makes a rod for your own back, where you continually can't see that how well you're doing. And the other thing that can go with being a Virgo is that you have a huge fear of failure. And often I've met many Virgos who won't take on anything if they think for 1 minute they might not be good at it, because they can't handle failing. They don't understand that failure is just another journey to success. So you can hold yourself back from all sorts of things that you could really enjoy for the fear of not being good enough.
A good point there, because to start a podcast, put myself out there in front of the public and to run that risk that nobody would listen to my podcast.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a big, huge, real fear of mine.
Yeah.
But I was more driven by the desire to at least give it a go. I just felt that there were many people out there that had good stories to share about how positive grief can be once you get through those initial, heartbreaking stages.
Absolutely.
So that's what drove me forward. And luckily I've been, really open to receiving lessons and learning from lessons. So now I know that I have skills that I'm really, really proud of. And so I'm not so hard on myself.
Good.
And I know
when
to let go now.
Well done.
Yeah, I still don't know when to leave work on time, but certainly I can step back and just say, well, okay, I don't think this is working or what have you, which I would have been reluctant to do when I was much younger. I would have stayed up all night trying to work a solution out.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So what else do we need to know? What else are our charts going to tell us about grief in particular and what we make?
Well, your moon represents your emotions and your choice in mother in this lifetime. And so how are you going to deal with life emotionally? So you need to look to your moon as an idea of how you're going to cope with things in life. So if you're born with your moon in Scorpio, for instance, Scorpio is the most intensely sensitive sign of the zodiac. So people with their moon in Scorpio feel things very, very intensely. And so for them to go through massive grief in this lifetime, they could be more likely to not recover from it, or more likely in some ways to not be able to get up again, because they're so hurt. They feel it so deeply and so intensely. And then you might have someone with their moon in Aries, which is a much more black and white, let's get on with it sort of energy. And they, of course, would also feel the pain and also, feel dreadful for any the circumstances they have to go through, but they have a black and white way of looking at it. So they'll think, okay, this is awful. I'm going to make my way through this, and then I'm going to have a plan, because that's the way I operate. So you can take every sign of the zodiac has its pros and cons, its challenges and its rewards. And we have to learn how to use those in the best way possible. So as a Virgo, you're the ultimate employee, and you will always do the best that you can. So you would apply that energy into your work. Applying that energy into your personal life would make you never have any time to relax, because you constantly be pushing yourself to be perfect at everything you do, from the shopping to the job to the gardening. And so you've got to take that energy and apply it in a certain way to make the best use of it, so that it becomes your friend and not your enemy.
Great. That is so good. And that explains so clearly the whole gamut of or range of emotions that people have when responding to the same event. Those that just, take it all in their stride, versus those ones that crumble in an absolute heap. So it'd be very interesting, then to look back and see where their moon is. And especially if it's in Scorpio. Yeah. Gosh, that's so fascinating.
And the other major planet in esoteric astrology is Saturn. Saturn is our teacher and our disciplinarian. So wherever he sits in your chart is where you're here to face your greatest fears and your biggest challenges in this lifetime. So and the thing with Saturn is that there's three things that he loves: hard work, discipline, and focus. So if you give that planet those things, he will reward you in every way. But if you run away from doing your hard work and being disciplined and focusing on what you meant to do in this lifetime, you won't get the success or the rewards that you chose to have because you haven't done the work.
And is that across your life, or is that only when it's
throughout your life? So what happens is that it takes Saturn approximately 28 to 30 years to get from where he starts off in one point of your chart around through all the houses and back to that point again. So astrologically, we don't believe you're an adult till you're 28 to 30 years of age, because you haven't had a go at all of your major life lessons until you reach that age. So 28 to 30 is a huge turning point for most people. Most people go through a major life event between those years, and it's to wake them up to the fact this is your life and you have to take responsibility for it. No one else is going to do it for you. So can you remember a major event 28 to 30 in your life?
Oh, God, I've had so many major events in my life. Oh, my gosh. Look, I've traveled overseas on my own, and then I actually even had a clairvoyant just before I went to go saying, no, they're telling me not to tell you anything more, because then I might not have gone, but I needed to go. I needed to travel. And yes, I had some really harsh lessons while I was traveling. And I think just learning to accept myself, because I never really easily, I have loads of acquaintances and a few very select friends, but I didn't easily make friends when I was younger, and I was very cautious about who I had around me, and I didn't really trust people. So those were some major lessons I needed to learn, to learn to trust people.
And the other thing that we can see very clearly in charts, which is actually what we can talk about at your chart, is what we call retrogrades. And retrogrades are our past life lessons. So if you're born with a planet in retrograde at the time that you're actually born, then there are major past life lessons to learn from that planet's placement in your chart. So when I look at your chart, your retrogrades are all to do with the area of home and family. And it's all Pisces energy. So basically what that's saying is that in other lifetimes, you have tried to use your spiritual energy to heal yourself, to heal other people, to have a different perspective on things, to grow and achieve things, and you weren't allowed to, or it all turned to custard in some way. And so in this lifetime, you're going to feel a great need to make things right from a spiritual perspective, and to use your spiritual knowledge and information to help people, because you weren't allowed to, or somehow it went wrong in another lifetime. So you're back this time round to make sure that you're able to do that this time. And so when we have past life lessons, they're always harder than the new lessons, because they're compounded. You've tried this before, you haven't got it, so you think to yourself, I'm going to make this so damn difficult in this lifetime, I would be stupid not to learn it. And so you present yourself with all of these things that, had you not lost your daughter, do you think you would be doing this today?
No, not at all. No.
And you wouldn't therefore have been able to offer so much healing and so much insight and so much clarity to people who don't know where to look, or suddenly find you, and there you are, the answer to their grief. Because in other lifetimes, you either tried to do this and weren't able to, or it just didn't work out for you in some way.
And I think we also still have a lot of conditioning around grief and not being able to move forward with it and getting stuck in it, and that you can't have happiness and joy and peace and calm and that following it, especially when it's been so major. And, and I just want to show people that is the ultimate, that is something that you really should be striving toward, because nobody's out to punish you, especially if you go back to you signing up to have this lesson or this experience, and those people signing up to it as well. So we're all party to the same thing. So once we understand that, we can look at it in a different way, and therefore we can then, start to manage it in a different way. It doesn't mean that you're still not heartbroken. It doesn't mean that you still don't miss those people in your life, because in a heartbeat, I would have my daughter back.
Of course.
However, actually, and I say this, my life has actually become far, far better, because I've had to learn so much more and do so much more healing that I've got a calmer, happier, more fulfilling life now because I've gone through those phases.
Yes. And the other thing is you'll probably never have to go through this again in this lifetime or any other lifetime, because you know, some people find, you know, I've heard stories of people who lose more than one child or who go through things. And when I hear those stories, I often wonder what happened after the first one. Did you manage to get back on your feet, or did you then believe that this was going to happen time and time again to you, and you had so much fear that you would lose another child that you actually manifested that?
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And so, you know, people like you took your experience, and as you said, you've got a better life now because of that experience. And as you said, you still have your daughter back in a heartbeat, of course, but you learnt what you needed to learn, and therefore it would be very, very unusual for you to have to experience anything like this in this lifetime or any other lifetimes, because you did the right thing with it.
Yeah, but then, you know, lo and behold, look what happened to me when we were doing my chart. I hadn't been in a relationship for many, many years because I didn't trust, and, you know, I wanted to focus on my daughter. So she just had my unconditional love. So then I taught myself to open up again, to open my heart out, to learn to love, to do all that. And then whammo, I meet the person who I instantly click with, and he gets taken away from me. And that's what you saw in my solar return. And you saw that very clearly.
Even though that was another horrendous experience for you, you were better equipped to be able to go through it. And you didn't allow it to do the damage to you that the first one did. So you learned from that experience, and you've moved through it. And again, dreadful thing to have to go through. But it's almost like your material for your work almost. Is that this is driving you and making you create all sorts of things that you never would have thought of doing before.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I tell you what it did do is, because I was such a Virgo and so concerned about looking after others after Tal died, I probably neglected myself. You know, like I didn't show people my grief. No. Yet, you know, with Aid, I just cried and cried and cried. And I released that. And I think I did it in a far healthier way the second time around, recognizing. And again, I just knew that, as unfair as it seemed, it was something that we both signed up to. And, you know, equally as much as he's given me from this, because I did learn a lot from this, I did learn that, you know, when I open my heart up, there is somebody beautiful there waiting for me, who's perfect fit for me. But he also learned from me about unconditional love and those sorts of things as well. And so when you start to think about that and think of it again, yes. And I probably needed to have those realizations and to see how different that grief experience was from my first one, and how far I've come.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And and you know, as I say, as I often say to people, as human beings, we're incredibly stupid because we only ever really tend to learn anything the hard way. There's always opportunities to learn things an easier way, but we always choose that harder road. And I think that is because of the humanness of us. The humanness of us has to experience the emotions of things. And this is where our emotions teach us a lot of things, but they also can absolutely trap us or have us on an emotional roller coaster ride when we don't have charge of our emotions. So, you know, I used to often think when I first started learning about astrology, I was thinking, why didn't I learn all of this or know this when I was in my teens or my 20s? Life would have been so much easier. But what I've actually realized now when I work with people that young is that you don't have the life experience to be able to put it all together, to be able to see what you're going through as an experience that you're to learn from. Because when you're in your teens or your 20s, the end of the world's come. You know, your boyfriend doesn't want you anymore, and it's the end of the world. And you don't even begin to think. And I often remember my teacher many years ago when my husband left me, and I was an absolute mess. And I always remember my teacher at the time saying to me, do you have any idea what an amazing teacher you're going to be after you've got through this? I'm thinking, that's not what I want to hear right now. That's the last thing I want to hear. But it's true.
Yes.
It's true.
And it's Same thing in our grief. We don't want people to tell us we're going to get through this. We're going to be okay. We're going to be happy again, because that's not where we're at. We want to feel miserable and heartbroken and our whole world is just crashed in on us. Exactly. So I just try, and when I'm speaking to people, that's what I want. Many, many different perspectives, so people can see it from so many different angles and take from it what works for them, what's relevant to them and their situation and their life. So when you do sessions with clients, you provide them with reports which cover things like how you approach life and how you appear to others, the inner you, your real motivation, and the mental interests and abilities. And we've talked about emotions and feelings and moods and romance. It also covers your drive and your ambition. What else is covered in these sessions?
Well, all the past life stuff. So what you haven't mastered in other lifetimes that you're back here to do. And a lot about how you just go about life. Usually as your sun sign, you have a certain way in which you will live your life, and other star signs will live theirs differently. And this is where we've got to be very careful we don't get caught up in comparing ourselves constantly to other people and thinking, well, they've got it easy and I don't. Because, unless you're inside someone's head or walking in their shoes, you've got no idea what they're going through and what their life is actually like behind what might look like a perfect facade. So within the chart, we can also see when you're going to go through certain things in life. Well, what times of your life will be more challenging than others? And that will be very dependent on certain planets, where they're moving through your chart at a certain time and what effect that's going to have on you. So every year we do what's called a solar return, which is your year ahead. So we look at what's in store for you for the next 12 months from your birthday one year to your birthday the next year. And where you spend your birthday every year sort of controls that. So my teacher used to travel all over the world to have the planets aligned in the certain part of her chart where she wanted them to be for what she wanted to gain or learn in the next year. So if she'd had a few years of bad money problems, then she'd travel to somewhere in the world where there was nothing in her area of money that was going to be challenging, so that she could not have to deal with that. So you can manipulate it a little bit, but the lessons that you come in with in the first place have to be learned. And you can spend your entire lifetime learning one of those lessons, or you could learn that by the time you're 5. So sometimes when I talk people through their charts and they say, oh, no, that's not me, I'm not like that. Well, they could well have been like that when they were 4 or 5 years old, but they've got no memory of being that because they're so much older. And so some things we work through and we don't even realize we've worked through them, and other things are very hard and very difficult. And usually the ones that are harder and more difficult are those ones that are from other lifetimes, that you've tried to master it before and you're back to try and do it again.
Right. Which is, again, just hearing you talk about that helps us understand why you can be born into a family where everyone else seems to be highly successful, in business and what have you, and money seems no issue. So that just explains so much of why we are like we are.
Yeah.
And that's fascinating stuff to know.
So what I feel is so important, though, is people to realize that nobody chooses to be unhappy. That is never, ever a choice you make. But you choose to go through things that will challenge you and make you unhappy. But that's not the end goal. And I think those people we talked about before who don't choose to look at anything more in life than what they get right in front of them, they're the ones that suffer the most, because they've got nothing else to make them feel that there's a reason behind, there's more to this. This has got to happen for a reason. There's got to be a silver lining, because there always is, but you've got to find it.
Yeah, good point. How does a pandemic factor into this, what we've just been through?
Well, that's been very much to do, as we believe, from the planet Pluto. So Pluto is the planet of transformation, and it takes him approximately 17 years to move through a sign of the zodiac. And so he's the type of planet that his job is to, wherever he sits in our charts, we arrive here the slave and we're here to become the master. So he's been in Capricorn for the last 17 years, and next year he moves out of Capricorn and into Aquarius, which will be quite something. So a Capricorn energy is very patriarchal, it's very traditional, it's very conservative, it's all old-fashioned. What's always worked in the past, we stick to. We don't go changing things. Everything's fine. We just do it like this. But what we have, what humanity hasn't realized is that the systems that we have in place have not evolved with us, and they're all out of date. The health systems, the banking systems, the education systems, they don't work. And so Pluto's job is to destroy everything, because year after year, we've been sticking bandages on things, thinking, oh, this isn't working, but if we just tweak it a little bit this way, or just make it a little bit like that, then it'll work. No, everything needs to be broken so it can be remade. And this is what's been going on with the pandemic, is making worldwide, shutting people down so they can start to realize that what you think and what you feel is true is the truth, not what you're told, not what other people try and make you do or say you to do. So we're moving out of, we've forgotten how to think for ourselves. And so we're moving back into that by going into Aquarius next year. And as we know, Aquarian people, they dance to their own drum beat. They're innovative, they're ingenious, they're forward-thinking, they are the future. And we've got to get out. We've been stuck in the past for too long. So the pandemic is about breaking out of that to create a new world.
But am I right in understanding that that is also a very feminine energy that's coming through as well?
Yes, the divine feminine, because we're all made up of the divine feminine, the divine masculine. The divine feminine is your intuition, it's your creativity, and it's your compassion. So your intuition is your connection to God or to the universe or whatever you want to call it. So when you're connected to that, you're connected to the universe, you're connected to the universal love. And so when we don't connect to that, we're not working with love, we're not working with God, we're not working with anything but our own egos. And this is what the world's become. We've forgotten that we co-create with the universe, we co-create with the planet. We cannot keep treating the planet the way we do and expect it to support us and look after us. And we've all forgotten, and it's sort of been forgotten, the importance of gardening, the importance of wishing, of praying, of thinking positive thoughts. All of that's just poo-poo. No, you need a job, you need an income, you need a computer. But, we've forgotten how important that the real things in this world are. And so this is all about reminding us to get back to that, to get back to what's real.
And quite selfish, I would say, too. We've been thinking about our own needs, us.
Yeah, it's just corporate greed and all the rest of it.
Compassion,
And so a lot of people are waking up now, which is a beautiful thing to see, people actually starting to put the dots together and realize, okay, if I don't want this, well, where can I look? Where can I put my energy? Where can I see things differently? And when you open yourself up to that there is more out there than just the 3D world that we live in, you get that support and that guidance and that insight that allows you to then think, hey, maybe if I did this, I could be happier, or I could create something that can make other people happy, or I could develop something that can move us forward, rather than thinking, oh, we'll just keep doing it that way because that's the way we've always done it. And it's just not working.
Yes. Yeah. I know, like, Biggie in my life has been learning gratitude, even for the simplest and smallest of things. And that has completely transformed my life.
Absolutely.
Whereas I took a lot for granted, and now I very rarely take things for granted, and I'm very, very grateful for that. There you go. But
so with the divine feminine, which connects us to our intuition, and sort of that's the first thing that comes, is your first thought is your intuition usually, and so that's your God energy, that's your spiritual energy. And so the divine masculine, its job is to take action and to do things. That's what the masculine energy is for. So if they're not aligned with one another, so if that true thought, that intuition, that idea isn't coming from God, isn't coming from the highest energies, then the action that is taken is also not coming from the highest energies. And that's where we all go wrong, is that we become too ego-driven, and so all of our actions become about what we want. I want this for me. I want to be famous. I want to have lots of money. I want. And we forget about what everybody wants and what's best for the highest good. So this is why this divine feminine energy is coming up now, to remind everybody you're all intuitive. Start listening to that part of you, and then your actions out of that will be aligned with the highest good of all concerned.
And there's that old saying, it takes a community or a village to raise a child.
Absolutely.
And that's what
and we should be going back to that, definitely.
Because look how dysfunctional it is now, with so many people living, working, trying to raise their children in isolation.
Yes, and how many parents both have to work, both work full-time, and children are in daycare, and so that connection between mother and child is being diminished, and that's not the way the world's meant to be.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff. So what is it that people are most seeking from you when they're connecting with you from all over the world?
Usually they are in a stage in their life where things are going wrong and they need to know why or how it can change or what they're missing. Why does this keep happening to me? Why do I keep getting dumped? Why does nobody love me? And so, often for most people, the most important lesson that 99% of us are here to learn is self-love. Because if you love yourself and believe in yourself, things don't tend to go as wrong. And you don't attract negative things to you because you're not putting out negative energy.
I was just going to add to that. Another thing that's really become highlighted to me is self-love. So many people struggle with self-love, yet we have no control over how we were born, what we're going to look like, whether we're tall or short, what color skin we have. We don't have any control over that. So we need to learn to love ourselves exactly as.
But that's also, your body type is part of what you chose before you were born. You chose to look the way you were, or the way you do. So you could learn something from that as well. And, maybe, for people, they might have had, 10 lifetimes of being the tallest person in the room always. So they think, okay, what's it like to be the shortest person in the room? I'm going to have a lifetime like that and see what that's like and whether what's life like being a short person? Is it different than being a tall person? And so, it's all about learning. So you choose these different body types the way that you look. And yes, once you're born, there's not a lot you can do with it, but you did choose it. So there'll be a reason why you chose it.
Yeah, and good to remember that. Instead of trying to change yourself, just accept yourself as you are, love yourself as you are.
Yes.
And
and I often notice this with people who are desperate to have children. And of course, having children, again, is a learning experience. And so there will be lifetimes for all of us where we will not be able to have children because you need to know what that's like. You've had, you've been a mum, you've been a sister, you've been a daughter, you've been all those things. What's it like to not have children? What's it like to never have that happen to you in the lifetime? I want to experience that to see what it's like. And so you come in and choose that. And then you spend that whole life using IVF and every other system you can think of to try and get pregnant when it's just not going to happen for you in this lifetime. It's not meant to be. And that's okay because you're learning something from that experience.
Oh, my God. I just love all this stuff. I just could keep talking and talking and talking to you because I know that we've only just started to hint at stuff. But
we can do another one anytime, Helen.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I'd love to get some feedback from our listeners, what they want to hear from you.
Sure.
But before we go, the first thing I want to know is what is the best thing that has happened to you so far today?
Today? I think talking to you, actually, because a few other things I've been trying to do today haven't gone very well. So, yes, talking to you today has been what I've really enjoyed doing. I mean, it's just nice to be able to talk to people about what I do without being the person, doing the reading or doing the information, but just actually talking about it in general is really nice. So, yeah, it's been great. This is the best thing of today.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah. What is your proudest moment to date?
Recently, I taught a retreat a couple of weeks ago to a whole lot of my graduate students. So these are students that have worked with me several years ago or some a bit more recently. And I was just so proud to see how far they'd all come, how they'd taken what they'd learned from me. And some of them had gone into working as healers and doing different sort of work. Others had just changed the way their perspective on life, so they were happier. Others had, they'd all just done something with the learning. And that just made me so proud of them that they'd kept going with everything. They hadn't just sort of, this is something I'll dabble in and then leave. They were keen to come back and learn more. And so the next thing we thought we might do together is all come back together again in another sort of retreat style thing. But everybody would then share, this is what I've developed and I'm going to share it with the group. And so rather than me teaching a retreat for 5 days, everybody will come in and just share their own gift and we'll all benefit from that.
Fantastic. I love that. That is so cool.
Yeah. So that was really proud. I felt so proud of them all. It was a wonderful.
Yeah, and rightly so as well. Yes. When your day turns to custard, and I don't need to explain that term to you, when your day turns to custard, what's your go-to?
Yeah. What's my go-to? It used to be a glass of wine, but not so much that anymore. Get outside in the garden, actually. Just get outside into nature.
Yes.
And just look at something that's simple. Just pick some flowers or pick some strawberries or something and just go back to basics.
I love that. That's mine as well. I always go out into nature when I'm feeling a little bit off kilter, and it just always just puts me right back on track again.
It grounds you.
Well,
and it just brings you back.
Lastly, what is the biggest thing that you would like our listeners to know about the work you do?
I would like them to know, to just encourage people to know that the more you know who you are and understand what makes you tick, the easier life is. When you really know, this is me, this is the way I go about life. So I'm not going to change to be like that person, because that's not me, and it's okay. I've got my own gifts, I've got my own talents, I've got my own ways of doing things, and they're just as good as everybody else's. So yeah, that self-acceptance and that self-love, and doing the work to understand what stops you from loving and accepting yourself.
Wow. And I know that when I went through the sessions with you, that certainly was life-changing for me. It validated all the lessons that I'd been learning over time, and because different things were showing up in different houses. So I really encourage anybody who's at a loss to understand what their purpose is, where they need to go, what the lessons are that they need to understand in this lifetime, to get in touch with you. So how can they do that?
They can contact me via my website, which is www.starwise, so STAR-WISE.com. So if you just go to my website, there's my blog posts are there, my readings are there, my events are there, and you can contact me through there if you want to book a reading. And I also have a Facebook page, Starwise Clairvoyant Astrology, where I post blog posts and other information as it comes to me. So they can contact me through there as well.
Fantastic. And I'll have those links in the episode notes as well, so people can just go and find them there as well. Deidre, I have to say, what an absolute wonderful hour it has been to spend with you, and just sharing your wealth of knowledge on this fascinating topic. And I'd love to have you on again. Wonderful. Thank you so very much.
And thank you, Helen, for having me. And I'm so impressed with everything that you've done through your grief. And, I hope you get lots of people. Are you getting a lot of feedback from people?
Yeah, look, sometimes people in grief are a little bit silent. So, they will listen and they'll watch and they'll be on the sidelines. But what is encouraging to me is that I know that community is just growing and growing and growing. And that is beautiful. So there's time soon that I'm just going to branch out and add some, other facets to my podcast, and really sort of, cement that community and see how Wonderful. I can help further in that area. So I'm excited to do that. So
wonderful.
Stay tuned.
Sounds great.
Yeah. Alrighty, that is an absolute wrap. Thanks for listening. I hope you got some real value from this episode. Let me know how I'm doing, or if there's a topic you'd like covered, by clicking on the Healing to Be You Gmail link, or going to the Healing to Be You website. To get notified of new episodes, hit the subscribe button, and please share if you know of someone who could benefit from this episode. Until next time, be kind to you and take good care.